We have lots to talk about in today's video, including some trade talk around the NHL on teams like Montreal and the Ottawa Senators, as well as the Anaheim Ducks. Plus, we have another waiver claim today, a big update on Columbus Blue Jackets prospect Caden Lindstrom, a big signing in Anaheim with Frank Vatrano, some more injury updates, and some updates from the World Junior Championships as they complete the medal rounds. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here in today's video. First up, a couple of quick news items. One, we had some more activity on the NHL waiver wire today. We had a claim and a new player placed on waivers. The Utah Hockey Club, the Utahns, as Elliot Friedman likes to call them, have claimed forward Nick DeSimone from the New Jersey Devils. So, of course, they recently lost Dakota Mermis back to the Leafs, who they had picked up for a little while earlier on waivers. They've been a very active waiver team this year. So DeSimone goes to Utah from New Jersey. And then today we saw the Los Angeles Kings place forward Arthur Kaliyev on waivers. Now, in the case of Arthur Kaliyev, a young player still in his early 20s, has had some success in the NHL, but is, I guess in the last year or so, kind of struggled to find a consistent role with the Los Angeles Kings. Battled an injury this year. There was a lot of talk that he wanted a trade in the summertime, hoping to get a fresh start with a new organization. Well, it never came to be. Obviously, I believe the Kings tried. It wasn't a case of them not trying to honor that request. It was really a case of teams not willing to pay their asking price, and they were not, at that point at least, prepared to let him go without having their asking price met. So at the end of the day, it never happened. He started the year, obviously not in a good spot, and ended up getting hurt. Now he's back. He's ready to play. He's already been down in the minors, I believe, on a conditioning stint, if I'm not mistaken. And now he's ready to play and has to go on waivers to go down there and be a regular member of the Ontario Reign Hockey Club affiliate for the Los Angeles Kings. However, I think they're quite content at this point to let him be picked up. Obviously, he's got a scoring ability. He's one of those players that I think I won't be shocked if he is picked up, just because of the fact that he does have a knack to score goals. Now, he's a little bit of a one-trick pony in that sense. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Victor Olofsson in Buffalo. Like, he had 1 year where he had over 20 goals, a lot of them on the power play. But he does have that ability to shoot and score, which is one of the hardest things to do in the NHL. There might be other aspects of his game that you're not in love with, but he's kind of a specialist in that sense. So there's a lot of speculation that he might be claimed by the Ottawa Senators. A couple of things there. One, the Sens are battling a few injuries right now. They have some forwards like Michael Amadio and David Perron, who we're going to update here shortly. They're out right now. There is a bit of a flu bug running through the team on top of that. And they're just coming back and finishing. They got one more game left on a 9-game road trip. 9 games that they had to go through, a grueling schedule because of the World Junior Championships being hosted in their home city, in their rink. So ultimately, the other connection here, though, is that Kaliyev played his junior hockey with the Hamilton Bulldogs, where Steve Staios, their GM, was the GM there. And, of course, Michael Andlauer was the owner. So Andlauer and Staios both very familiar with this player. So, he had a lot of success in Hamilton. So there is some belief that because of the injury situation with the Sens, that they may be a likely team to claim him because there's familiarity there. And he's not making a ton of money. He doesn't have a ton of term or anything like that. So it's kind of a low risk, potentially high reward if it works out. And, you can kind of go from there. So it wouldn't be shocking to see, especially with the Sens, a lot of their top prospects that they used to have are all regulars on the roster now. Their prospect pool depth is not the greatest as it was because they went through that phase already, and now they're trying to get into the playoffs. So, they've built it up a little bit more in recent years, but there's not a lot of high-end talent on the way. Most of that talent that they have has reached the NHL over the past couple of years. Like, they've had 3 first-rounders from a few years back with Timmy Stützle, Jake Sanderson, and Ridley Gregg. They're all regulars now, right? Also, that same draft, they got like Merrilainen and Cole Reinhardt. They're not regulars, but they're getting, a lot of substitution action, if you will, as spares. So, they could use a player like this. So it wouldn't be shocking to see it happen. So we'll see what happens tomorrow on waivers, but Kaliyev is there for the picking, and we'll see if the Sens or another team put in that claim. Even if Ottawa tries to get him, but a team lower in the standings picks him or puts on a claim too, then of course they will get the player. It really boils down to who's lowest in the standings that puts on a claim. Now, a big signing today in Anaheim as well, which will take a player off the market from the trade front. Frankie Vatrano has extended with the Ducks on a 3-year deal, and it's kind of a complicated scenario. This was actually announced by the player himself via video through his own social media, which is kind of unusual, but it's kind of neat at the same time. Had one of his kids in there with him. So a 3-year contract for Vatrano. The AAV for cap purposes is $4.57 million. However, it's actually $18 million total. So essentially, $9 million of the 18, so half, is being deferred. Now, this is the only contract we've seen in the NHL where deferred money's been used for salary. The other contracts, a couple of them that have used deferred money, have used it on signing bonus money, not on actual salary. So, of course, we know California heavily takes tax the state. We've seen some of the baseball contracts where this is more common, like Ohtani with the Dodgers has a ton of money deferred. He'll be getting money from them for eons down the road. The Vatrano deal is going to be similar, kind of Ohtani-esque, not nearly the same magnitude, of course, but same sort of scenario. So essentially, $9 million of his salary is not going to be paid out during the next 3 years. It's going to start being paid to him in 2035. And then for 10 years in a row, he's going to make $900,000. So that's how it's going to work. So smart in a sense that he'll generate income for himself well after he's done playing. The other good part about this is that he's obviously playing in like I said, in a high taxed area right now. But when he draws his salary from the Ducks later on, he's obviously very likely going to be retired and living somewhere else. So he can actually pay taxes on a different financial situation and on a different state. So that will play a big role in how much he gets to keep in his pocket. So kind of very, like I said, Ohtani-esque in the same sort of strategies, but not nearly the same magnitude of money. Some other updates around the NHL today and some rosters and injury updates. The Rangers today, Chris Kreider did not play. He's out considered day-to-day. The Penguins activated Chris Letang for tonight's action. The Ottawa Senators updated several players. Finally, Linus Ullmark has not been on the ice yet. He last appeared right before Christmas with the Sens against the Edmonton Oilers. Left the game because of tightness in his back. Travis Green said they're kind of considering basically week to week, making progress, but not ready to get on the ice yet. No real clear timeline to when he will, which is going to be cause for another topic in today's video. Outside of that, Michael Amadio, David Perron have been skating on their own. They're almost ready to be joining the team, so that's promising. They're getting closer, but still a little ways yet. Michael Amadio has been out with a concussion. In case you don't know, David Perron is battling some sort of back injury as well. Travis Hamonic in their last game against the Blues, which they dropped that game as well. They've been on a bit of a skid after a phenomenal December and winning streak. Kind of gone the other way here the last 3 or 4 games. Hamonic's going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks with a knee injury. He blocked a shot and went down in a ton of pain. I'm surprised he actually came back and played some after that, but but now he's feeling the repercussions of that. In 2 to 4 weeks is what they're giving them. The Kraken today, they've got a couple of big losses. They've announced that Yanni Gourde and Joey Decord both moved to injury reserve, just retroactive to a couple days ago. And the Maple Leafs, we don't have an update here just yet. Probably going to find out in the next day or so. But in their game tonight against the Philadelphia Flyers, they lost Jake McCabe. He got in a fight with Garnet Hathaway. And Hathaway, I think it's fair to say, got the best of him. And he got hurt. He went down, and he had an awkward time getting up, and then when he finally did get up, he went straight to the room. They announced he wouldn't be back, so we don't know the full extent, but looks like they may have lost McCabe for a bit, but we'll have to wait for an update on that front as well. Now, as I mentioned, another big update considering key prospect for the Columbus Blue Jackets, Caden Lindstrom, of course, was taken very highly in last year's NHL draft, one of the top centermen available. Obviously, clearly Lindstrom was a player that came into the draft, as a top 5 talent. We didn't know where he was going to go. Kind of plagued by back injury that kind of derailed his season last year. Like I said, one of the top prospects in the center position. Big size, lots of potential. The Blue Jackets loved this guy, and you had even lots of offers to trade down because I think a lot of teams were trying to get their hands on Ivan Demidov. And the Blue Jackets wouldn't play ball. They took Lidstrom, and he has not played this year. The update is not officially from the team, but from one of the Columbus reporters, saying they have it on good authority from the Jackets' own staff that Caden Lindstrom is not expected to resume playing this year, that he's most likely going to miss the entire 24-25 campaign. He was limited to only 32 games last year in junior with the Medicine Hat Tigers, and this year is going to be a complete wash for him. He's likely going to remain in Columbus rehabbing. He did have a surgery recently, so they want to make sure they proceed with a ton of caution here and just err on it on the side of caution, make sure that nothing screws anything up in his recovery and that he's able to put this hopefully behind him and move forward. So obviously, like I said, a big update in a negative sense and not in that way. But Caden Lindstrom would be expected, since he's missed so much time, that he'll definitely play junior hockey next year. He'll go to Columbus Blue Jackets training camp, I'm sure, but go back, report to Medicine Hat Tigers for his final junior season. I would suspect if he's healthy and can play the way that we know he can, he could be a key member and a big player for Team Canada at the World Juniors next year. Of course, assuming that their selection committee gets their heads out of their butts and picks the right players. But that should be a big role for him, and it could be a big year for him. But this year, it looks like it's going to be a complete wash. Now, of course, kind of reminds me of Gabe Vilardi. Vilardi, after he was drafted, he had a lot of back issues. And there was a point with the LA Kings before he got traded to Winnipeg that there was some serious concern that he might not really ever get his career on track before it really fully got going. But he eventually was able to put everything behind him, move along, and now he's a very key contributor. Of course, was acquired in the Dubois trade, which backfired on the Kings, and has worked out quite nicely for the Winnipeg Jets. So hopefully Lindstrom can have the same sort of outcome that Vilardi did. Now, as I mentioned, some other updates from the World Juniors today. As I record this video, the gold medal game is going on between the Finns and Team USA. It was 2-1 at last check-in here for the Finns. They got off to a hot start, scored the first goal. The U.S. bounced back and then tied it up. And then right after they tied it, the Finland team came right back and made it 2-1. They're looking really good. So we don't know who wins gold here as of yet. I'll update that in the next video. But we did see, I'd say it's fair to say, a bit of an upset. But Czechia won bronze earlier, kind of defeating and stunning Team Sweden. As good as Sweden has been in the last, they got, what is it, one gold medal in 40 years. And they hardly ever lose in the preliminary round. They make it to the playoff knockout round a lot, undefeated, and hardly ever walk away with a gold medal. It's almost, like I said, one in their history, and even then, they've got some bronze and silver on their resume here. But Czechia has been getting stronger and stronger. This one was a wild one. It went to a 14-round shootout. 28 shot attempts, and Kraken prospect into the top player and captain for the Chechian team, Edward Shea, scores the go-ahead clinching goal. Now, of course, he had, because the way the international shootout rules go, after you get through the initial 5-player round, you can go multiple players, like you can reuse the same guys. He had, I'm not sure how many attempts he had. He went a bunch of times, and the coach said that he wanted him to be the hero. He knew that he could be the hero, and he just figured if he kept getting a chance, it was going to happen, and good enough it did. He missed on his first couple, but he scored some big ones to keep them in it and then eventually win it. So good on Czechia to come through and win. Unfortunate for Sweden, another World Juniors letdown. So we'll see who wins gold. Can the U.S. win gold back-to-back for the first time in their history, or are the Finns going to stun them like they did in the preliminary round and walk away with a somewhat unexpected, under-the-radar win here in the gold medal game? We'll have to see, but the Finns have been good. They've had great goaltending and pretty good overall team game grade on face-offs and whatnot, so we'll see how this game ends up going. Now, as I mentioned as well, we continue to get the quarter-century teams from various NHL clubs as the NHL announces these around the league. Today we got the Anaheim Ducks. They've got, of course, don't have a huge history, but majority of their history, of course, falls into this 25-year history period, of course, from 2000 to 2025. So, obviously, they were around before that, but not too much longer. Team 1 for the all-time greats now for the Anaheim Ducks includes Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, and Teemu Selanne. Now, on the back end, of course, they've got Cam Fowler, who they just recently traded, came just shy of playing 1,000 games for the franchise. Scott Niedermayer, of course, one of the best defensemen really ever. He had a phenomenal career. And Jean-Sebastien Giguère between the pipes. The second team for the all-time Ducks quarter-century team includes Paul Kariya, who had a phenomenal run there. Number 2 overall pick behind Sidney Crosby, Bobby Ryan, who had multiple 30 and 40 goal seasons before being traded to Ottawa. And then, of course, Jakob Silfverberg, who had a long run there, who was acquired for Bobby Ryan in that same trade. So they both go on to be on the second team for the Ducks here. On the back end, we've got Chris Pronger, who along with Niedermayer helped win them that 07 Stanley Cup. Francois Beauchemin had a long run there, good successful career. And, of course, John Gibson, who we're going to talk about here in just a minute as well. So Gibby makes the second team. No surprise there. He's been a long-standing, top-notch goalie for them for many, many years. Now, as I mentioned, on the trade front, we're going to take a look at 2 teams, Ottawa and Montreal, who are, of course, all right now the Sens hold down the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. But because they've lost the last few games, the insurance, you could say, or the gap behind them has closed significantly. A lot of teams are right there, tied or nipping at their heels, including the suddenly hot Montreal Canadiens, who are right there. They're, I think, within 2 points, if I'm not mistaken. The Canadiens, according to Dave Pagnotta, are expected to be both buyers and sellers as we approach the NHL trade deadline. So basically, we're expecting Kent Hughes to continue to most likely move out his pending UFAs. There's no point. I mean, even though they now all of a sudden have an outside shot at playoffs, I don't think they should throw away their plans for the future because of that. I still think they could move out a veteran or two and still be in just as good a shape. And I don't really think it's going to really affect their outcome here to try to be a playoff team, to be honest. The names that you're expected to see go include David Savard, Christian Dvorak, and Yoel Armia are almost the ones that they're pretty much a guarantee. Now, Savard, they'll find a trade for him, there's no doubt. But Armia and Dvorak don't have a ton of value, and it is possible that they will try to move those guys, and they may not be successful. Therefore, they may just end up walking in the summertime as UFAs. They're definitely not going to be back in Montreal next year. Now, another couple of names to watch. One is Mike Matheson, although I do think he's less likely. Pagnotta brings him up as one of the 5 candidates to be moved, but he plays so many minutes for the Canadiens, and they have such a young blue line, especially if they do move Savard. I don't think they move Savard and Matheson both. Savard's more likely. I think personally Matheson more likely stays. The other more interesting name, though, is Jake Evans. According to Pagnotta's report here, still feels it's more likely than not that Evans gets traded. Given this, if you look at his age, what his contract demands are going to be, he's playing exceptionally well right now. It might put their ability to sign him on a reach. Not that they can't afford, a bit of a raise, but he's probably going to be able to get a lot more in the open market. At the same time, his trade value at the deadline is probably going to be possibly more than they can pass up. So a lot of teams are going to be looking for those depth centermen, these number 3, number 4 spots to really improve their positioning down the middle going into the playoffs. And I think he's going to be a key guy that a lot of teams are going to be zoning in on, and I think the offers are going to be too good for them to pass up. So I do think there's a good chance Evans moves. Now, the most likely scenarios we see, for Evans, you're probably getting picks of prospects, or if they can find a younger roster player that they like, maybe. But, David Savard, you're probably looking at, future-based prospect. You're not going to get anything on those deals, I don't think, that's going to be immediate help to your roster. But what they are expected to do is that they're also going to be looking for teams that maybe have players that they want to consider moving. Like we saw the Capo deal with the Kraken, those types of deals. Something along the Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook type of strategy where they're going to be getting, especially if they get deals done ahead of the deadline, which is, not going to be surprising if they do, then we're going to see a scenario where they might, if they move like Savard and they move Evans, they're going to have some extra assets that maybe they can flip those assets and get back another good young player to continue adding to their roster. Now, they've got lots of interesting names coming up through the ranks here that are, going to be expected to take on bigger roles as well. So, they might be, content to continue building with futures, but they can only have so much future-based stuff, or eventually someone has to go, and they need to create, move that for something that can happen today. We've seen Laine. He's been a good fit since he's arrived there. Doc was looking like he wasn't, and I did wonder about his future, but he's been playing a lot better as of late. We'll see if he can continue that or not. You got guys like Beck and Kapanen that are waiting in the wings to take a spot next year when guys like Armia and Dvorak are not there anymore either. So lots of movement in Montreal. So we should see some selling and some buying if it works out. So to get the selling done first, flip those assets into buying mode for something that can help them in the future on a younger player that they've had a lot of success with here so far. Now in Ottawa, as I mentioned, because of concerns to the Linus Ullmark injury, Bruce Garriock's reporting today in his latest article that essentially the Sens are on the goalie market exploring options. Like I said, with Ullmark likely going to be out for another week, there's a few more games. Forsberg hasn't been good. And plus on top of that, you got Levi Merrill, who's had a couple of good appearances, but it's a small sample size, and they don't want to push their luck and overdo it with him. They really do like Merrill-Linen's game and think he's got a bright future, but they don't want to rush him. So ideally, is he poised right now to be the prime backup or 1B for Ullmark? No, not really. Maybe spot duty here and there would be probably all they'd want to do with Merrill-Linen for the time being. So lots of talk that they're looking for instead of more of a backup, more of a goalie who can play more of a 1B scenario like Ullmark was used to in Boston. And lots of talk that they're really looking at John Gibson out of Anaheim. Now, of course, we know Gibson's been looking for that fresh start for a long time. We know he's supposedly given the Ducks a lot of teams that he'd be willing to go to for a fresh start. Not a lot of time left on the contract. But, if the Anaheim Ducks retained even a little bit of money, even if they knock, say, even maybe $1.5 million off the deal and retain, and then let's say they take Forsberg as well, or they could move Forsberg in another deal or through waivers or something, then that would make the deal a lot more feasible financially for the Sens. Now, of course, they'd have to put something else in the deal to cover, for those actions, for the Gibson trade itself, and then for taking Forsberg. But, I don't know what that would be exactly. I don't think the asking price at Anaheim is huge right now. I think the biggest hurdle in the past has been the contract and the retention that teams are looking for. So we'll see if the Sens go out and find themselves another goaltender. But they're kind of looking at this as saying if they could find themselves a good 1B goalie to work with Ullmark in a tandem right now, and then they can let guys like Merrill-Linen and Sogaard just go back to the minors and continue their developing, and they can analyze those guys for the future. Like Sogaard's going to be the more interesting one next year because he's not going to be waivers he'll be eligible for waivers next year. So they can't just send him down, but they have to kind of cut bait or move forward with Sogaard next year, which I'm not sure they're ready to do. I don't think they've seen enough to do that. So it's going to be interesting. But Merrill-Linen, I think they're high on. They want to see what he has down the road. But another year or so in Belleville to continue developing would be great for him. And if they could bring in a guy like Gibson who could finish out this year and have another year in his contract, and then, of course, they get Ullmark for 4 years, that, to me, would solidify the position. Give them a guy who can play more games if Ullmark is going to miss time. And then, they can reduce the workload. And if two guys that can cover the net would be preferable because Forsberg's not living up to his end of the bargain here. And they need an upgrade in the worst way. So we'll see what happens, but I expect the Senators to maybe be busy here in the next couple of days with a possible waiver claim and as they scour the goalie market to look for help with Ullmark's injury. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.